Next up is John Cumbers. So John is the founder and CEO of SynBioBeta. John has been leading the global activity hub for the synthetic biology industry for the last 11 years and comes from a background of molecular biology, biochemistry, and bioinformatics, and has a passion for applying cutting-edge technologies to solve real-world problems and create positive social impacts. And it was funny because we approached John and said, hey, this is kind of what we're talking about for the day. His background in something like the funding side of biotech. And then he said, but I've been really interested in this new thing lately. And it kind of doesn't fit the scope, but it's really, really, really exciting. And I said, hey, come talk about the thing that you think is really exciting, because I think that's really contagious. So John, please give us your old school presentation with no PowerPoints.
21 years ago, on a warm July evening, I joined my local astronomy club. I was lying back on a picnic bench, looking up at the stars, trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life. As I gazed into the vastness of space, two things became crystal clear to me. The first, I believed that we must simply have a creator somewhere out there in the universe. This can't just be random chance that we're all here. I wanted to explore that, and I wanted to understand the universe around us. The second was that time was my ultimate limitation. The universe was vast, and our human lifespans were painfully short to even scratch its surface. So I set out on two grand missions for my life. The first was to explore the solar system, understand who created it, understand why we exist and if we are alone. And the second was to live forever, to give us the time needed to achieve the first goal. To pursue these goals, I pivoted completely, shifting from computer science to biology. I wanted to tackle life itself, to extend it indefinitely. 8 years later, after earning my PhD in biology from Brown University, I had a sobering realization. Biology is far more complex and messy than I had ever imagined. And I came to agree with the mainstream view that aging is an inherent property of life, a manifestation of entropy in a complex system, and stopping it seemed impossible. The dream of fully understanding biology, all 20,000 genes in my genome, all 100,000 proteins that those genes become, and all 30 trillion cells that make up my body, it just did not excite me anymore. The sheer complexity was overwhelming. Now, I did pursue the dream of space. I actually got a job at NASA and I worked there for 7 years. But I had given up on the idea of living forever. I shifted my focus in life. I moved out to the suburbs. I focused on raising my two wonderful children and embracing the notion of passing on my genes and living forever through the next generation. I was quite content, for a while at least. But the winds have changed, and over the last 6 months, I now believe that two revolutions are happening that have reignited my hope for longevity. The first revolution is in the impact that AI is going to have on our ability to understand and engineer biology. And the second revolution is in the breakthroughs in brain regeneration and body replacement. The synthetic biology community and the SynBioBeta community, and a number of you here are part of the events that we do and the workshops that we put on, has always been on a mission to make biology easier to engineer. But now along comes a tool that changes everything. AI is the ultimate tool that we've been waiting for, a tool that may finally allow us to make biology understandable and easy to engineer. This year I had a pivotal realization that aging might now be solvable, not by humans, but by AI. For many years, our field has been focused on a question: what experiment should I run to understand more about my biological system? But something's changed recently, because all the conversations that I have with scientists and engineers are trying to answer a different question. The same question that many of the talks this morning tried to understand. What experiments can I run to generate enough data to feed into my AI model? We call it hyperscale biology. Once the AI understands enough biology, the game changes. And aging then shifts from a scientific problem to a solvable engineering problem. But the most difficult and complex part of human biology is what's going on up here in the brain. And I had somewhat of a spiritual awakening over the last few years, and now have a yearly meditation practice where I do a week-long silent retreat and a daily meditation practice of 20 or 30 minutes of meditation. And I've turned from a very skeptical scientist about spirituality into somebody that is very connected between how my brain controls my body and how my body controls my brain. So the second breakthrough comes from neuroscience. Recent studies have demonstrated that the brain is far more adaptable and regenerative than we ever thought might be possible. For example, work on stem cell research in mice, led by John Hibbert at Albert Einstein College of Medicine and now at ARPA-H as a program manager, has shown that newly injected neuronal stem cells into the brain can integrate with existing brain networks. John showed that he could reconnect the new cells into the existing network of a living mouse. We don't yet know if they are useful connections, but we know that they are active. And this research is now moving into monkeys. The next step will bring the deactivation of part of the monkey's brain, injecting of the new stem cells into that area of the brain, and demonstrating that the function can be regained. Clinical cases in humans also reveal remarkable brain plasticity. For example, one patient that John talks about had a tumor the size of an orange growing in the frontal cortex of their brain. What he showed was that neighboring neurons rerouted around the tumor to create and compensate for the lost function of the cells that were destroyed by the tumor. What this indicates is that you could do a gradual brain replacement, bit by bit, so that you could replace and rejuvenate the brain. Now, by comparison, if you got a stroke and you instantly killed a part of your brain the size of an orange, you'd have no function left there, and there would be no time to migrate that lost function. But if you do it bit by bit, then you would have the time to replace it. So this opens up the door to an extraordinary idea: the gradual regeneration of the human brain bit by bit using stem cells. It's the ancient myth of the ship of Theseus come to life, replacing every part of the ship until it's an entirely new ship. Now, we might be able to do the same with the human brain. This is not science fiction. It's grounding in emergent science. And there are two relevant startups that have clinical trials in this area. Stem cell injections for treating Parkinson's disease are now in clinical trials with standardized allogeneic treatments from a company called Blue Rock Therapeutics, and patient-specific or autologous therapies from a company called Aspen Neuroscience. That is, they've taken stem cells, injected them into the areas of the brain where Parkinson's is causing a problem, and been able to reactivate those neurons. Or they've taken your own stem cells, cultured them, put them back into your brain. CRISPR has enabled precise genome editing at unprecedented scales, and multiplex genome engineering means that we can now design new kinds of customized cells. Engineering iPSCs, induced pluripotent stem cells, customized to suit your needs. Imagine about to get a dose of fresh stem cells to rejuvenate your brain, but now being able to choose between your own neurons, engineered to make you super intelligent or to have super longevity. Genome-wide association studies have shown a number of SNPs involved in both of these traits, which could be engineered into these new neurons. And there's a final frontier that is opening up, and that is of whole body replacement. While the brain is the most critical part of the self, what about the body? Imagine this. Clone your skin cells to create an embryo of yourself. Edit that embryo to remove the genes responsible for cortical development of the brain. Use a surrogate to bring the embryo to term, and nurse this brainless clone to physical maturity, and then transplant your brain into that new body. Now imagine the ethical possibilities. These bodies, sustained and functional, could also provide life-saving organs for those in need. So is it possible to grow a body without a brain? There's actually a known condition called anencephaly, and it's a birth defect that occurs when a baby's brain is missing. Sadly, 1 in 10,000 babies is currently born this way, without a cortex. Most are aborted, but some are brought to term. These individuals have no consciousness, yet their bodies function via the brainstem. They breathe, grow, and undergo puberty, but are essentially brain dead. In rare cases, loving family members have cared for these individuals for decades, even exercising them. In one case, a remarkable mother chose to bring her baby to term so the child's organs could save another baby's life. This is the final frontier where synthetic biology, AI, and neuroscience converge. Together, they have the potential to redefine human existence. Imagine a future where we could regenerate our brains and replace our bodies, where the boundaries of life are no longer dictated by biology alone. The tools are here, the data is coming, AI will solve biology, and synthetic biology will engineer it. In my opinion, this is no longer a science problem. It is an engineering problem. Let's embrace this brave new world where we can explore the universe and extend our lives to fully experience its wonders. I invite you all to live long and prosper. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Hey, John. As you know, I've been in the longevity field for quite a long time, and this has always been one of the issues I've been worried about, that, the stuff above the neck is much more difficult than stuff below. And we might just have, a lot of people driveling in nursing homes as a result of our efforts. I'm just curious how you think about the sequencing of the progress now that you're looking deeper into the AI, and whether you think there's going to be a mismatch between the sort of neuroscientific progress versus the rest of the body.
So the question is about the timelines for the really hard part, let's say the reconnection of the spinal cord.
I mean, do you think AI sort of gets around this problem of, maybe solving cardiovascular issues and cancer below the neck, et cetera, versus solving, neurological issues, neurodegeneration, et cetera?
I don't know, but everything that I know about biology and the current pharmaceutical industry in terms of single molecules going after particular conditions, I just don't see that getting us where I want to be, which is living for as long as you want. And this is why I gave the preamble as to my motivation, is that I just haven't been motivated over the last 20 years because I look at everything that's happening in longevity and I'm just like, that's going to get you another 10 years maybe? So that's why I'm very excited about this, because I don't see it as a scientific issue about a single drug and the effect that that's going to have. And, sure, maybe you cure heart disease, but are you also going to cure cancer? Are you also going to cure plaques in the brain? It seems like whack-a-mole. And again, I mentioned my history with meditation and mindfulness, because for anybody who meditates, you realize that we're not quite sure where the consciousness is or where it comes from, but I think the chances of us being able to regenerate the brain and transfer the consciousness into new neurons based on the work of injecting these stem cells into mice and seeing the activity move into there, that just seems so much more promising.
Are you going to start a research institute? Are you starting a biotech company around this? Are you trying to unify industry leaders into a really like a very hands-on approach? You mentioned Johnny Bear, someone who we've also been in touch a lot. Yeah.
So it's a good question, Paul. I don't actually do any real work. As many of you know who've been to our events, they're just big fun parties that bring together really interesting people. So I'm hosting a very important party during JP Morgan with all of the people that we've just mentioned. And in May at SynBioBeta, there's going to be a very important panel on the stage. Brian Johnson and Jason Kelly from Ginkgo are actually talking about this topic. So I'm doing what I'm best at, which is the convening power of SynBioBeta and John Cumbers to bring together the right people around the government policymakers, the capital, the entrepreneurs, and the scientists. So this really is quite new, but when I was...
You sold me, I'm coming.
Okay. But, I haven't actually, when Jeff invited me, I was like, oh, sure, I could roll out the old PowerPoints that I've been talking about for 5 years. And then I was like, but I'm not passionate about that. I'm passionate about this new thing, which, I'm just reinvigorated. And now, I'm happy to have the conversation about how disgusting or immoral or unethical it is to transfer your brain, or egotistical to transfer your brain into a new body. I'm happy to have that conversation as well, because it's like when I first heard this idea, I was like, that's disgusting, and you're crazy. And then it's just been eating away at me at the back of my mind, like, yeah, it is still pretty disgusting, but maybe it's not so crazy. And once we get to the point where it's just going in for the same as a hip replacement or a heart transplant, but it's just a body replacement or your quarterly injection of stem cells into the brain. All these, IVF is still a miracle to me that IVF works, and yet that's a regular process that unfortunately so many couples are going through.
Could you list what are your top 5 regulatory, ethical, cultural hurdles you would like to tackle first?
That's a good question. Maybe I could list the top 1. which is maybe a couple. So I think one is the couple of science fiction movies about bodies being grown for replacement. So I think that's a cultural thing that we should talk about. The most interesting one is, to me, the most interesting ethical beachhead is all of the babies that die because they don't have enough organs to replace them, and the 1 in 10,000 babies that are born without a brain. And so being able to match those donors to those recipients for the babies, I think would be such a wonderful, wonderful thing, where you could think that the baby that would otherwise be brain dead or aborted is actually brought to term, and those organs of your poor baby is being able to be reused in a baby that wouldn't otherwise live. I think that's a wonderful thing that we could and should be doing as a society.
And would the parents be compensated? What's that incentive?
I haven't thought about it. I wouldn't. I mean, I hadn't thought about this as a business. No, I think. I don't know.
So, if you were a betting man, which seems to be a common theme in my question. Maybe I'm just a degenerate. Which do you think is going to be the rate limiting step? Is it the Theesianship integration of memories and brain function? Is it going to be brain transplantation? Is it going to be, basically inducing skin cells back into embryos so that you can regrow a body? Like, from the research that you've done, which do you think is coming last?
Skin cells to embryos, I think, is solved, or imminently. The body, the brain transplant has been shown but not repeated in monkeys. There's a couple of companies, one company and a professor at Harbin Institute of Technology in China. So that's moving along. So probably the highest risk, most difficult unknown piece is when you inject these new neurons into different parts of the brain, whether they will be able to take up the function of the brain. Now, interestingly, I've heard that the brain replaces the body replaces all of its cells 7 times over throughout your lifetime. So this is happening, but obviously, I mean, the brain is an amazing thing, but I'm sure you've all heard about these neuroscience stories of interesting neuropathies that people get, when different parts of the brain go, and other people who can lose 90% of the electrical activity in the brain, but still functioning as relatively normal. So the brain's an incredibly plastic thing. So I can't wait to see the results of these experiments. Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you for letting me share the story.